My name is Shashidhar. I am the Chief Technology Officer of Fractal. To begin with, I would like to thank all of you for inviting me here and giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts in this hot and relevant subject, right? The customer, workforce management and workplace, right? So how all these three are interrelated and how do we have to kind of address the challenges that keep coming from time to time, right? So happy to be here, and over the next 20 minutes, I'll just share some of my thoughts. I'll put some slides together to kind of take you through the journey that what we are facing, some personal experiences as well, yeah? To begin with, I just wanted to kind of introduce Fractal because it sets the context for my thoughts as I go through the session, right? So Fractal was one of the pioneers of providing analytics services in India. It was started way back about 24 years back, right? So the mission statement and vision statement is something that, I joined Fractal about 3 years back, is something that connects all these three to kind of bring out the value that organization wants to provide for the industry, right? So it succinctly captures the vision behind Fractal is to kind of power every human decision in the enterprise and make that impact to every client that we serve, right? At the end of the day, the value is something that is very critical to kind of measure, right? Something that cannot be measured is not valued, right? So that's where this $1 billion value to every client that we serve acts as a good guiding light for us to kind of keep us all, connected across all dimensions for the client, right? So that's something that guides us on a day-to-day basis. And if you broadly look at it, when Fractal started as an analytics firm, they were primarily into writing algorithms. They were actually into probability-based, and then they moved to deep learning, neural network, what have you, and now the Gen AI world, right? But essentially what Fractal as an organization realized is, while algorithms, you can actually kind of build the best of algorithms, but unless it is supported by two other disciplines, which are engineering and design, the adoption of analytics is going to be extremely limited, right? So that's where these three integral disciplines came together to help us kind of position ourselves in the market about how we can enable enterprises to drive impactful outcomes through analytics, right? So how do you build the best AI? You can build the best AI algorithms, but if it is not, if it doesn't help enterprises adopt it to the right practices, if it doesn't keep the end user in mind while designing the solution, the adoption will be limited. So that's how all these three disciplines kind of come together as an integral approach to help client address their day-to-day needs, right? So this kind of summarizes the Fractal's philosophy, right? One is, how do we kind of bring AI, engineering, design together? How do we use data, compute, and techniques together to kind of drive accurate, AI output, which can actually be adopted within the enterprise? Because accuracy is one thing that will help drive exponential adoption of AI. So far, the adoption of AI has been fairly intermittent. Some organizations, some enterprises, some functions have adopted it and it has become mainstream, but some organizations are still struggling to adopt AI, right? So that's why these two equations become extremely critical. Each of these dimensions, right? Analytics, engineering, design, they're all going through their own disruptions in each of their dimensions. So these two equations become important. But the third dimension, which I think is the topic of relevance for today's discussion, is about how do we bring these two to life, right? How does an organization bring these two equations to life? And that is a function of talent, culture, and governance. So, and that's what I'm going to touch in the subsequent slides, right? So, if you broadly look at client, one of the subjects was customer services, right? It is extremely critical for organization to continuously stay relevant to help its clients defend their positions. Like, given the advent of so many new technologies, so many disruptions, every enterprise in the globe is almost facing an existential crisis, as well as how to thrive and survive and lead the industry, right? So these are the two different paradigms that every enterprise, the disruptions are so very many. And every day when you come in the morning, some new business model, some new innovation is happening in the client places, and some new technology is coming into play. How does an enterprise relate to it, right? How does an enterprise stay relevant, and then thrive and, survive and thrive and then lead the industry? So I've just kind of given some broad-based things that clients are dealing with, right? One is how do they keep their strategy relevant, right? The existential question starts from strategy all the way down to execution, right? So how do they stay relevant in terms of strategy? How do they help, how do they kind of innovate, modernize, automate, bring down the cost? The value levers are extremely critical. Everything that is done in the enterprise in the context of technology or business initiatives, how does it kind of influence the top line, bottom line, as Sanjeev was saying, right? Unless the top line, bottom line, line of sight is there, anything that gets delivered doesn't have any meaning, right? So enterprises have to deliver value on an ongoing basis, and that's where, with so many new technologies coming into play, how do they keep the line of sight to the business value? And of course, when all of these are happening, how does organizations drive change management within the organizations, right? Unless there is workforce experience which varies from people who are coming out of college just now, and then there are people with 20, 30, 35 years. Some of the organizations like Infosys, Capgemini, Wipro, all of them have been in existence for 40 plus years. So how do you kind of address both ends of the spectrum, right? One is the experienced team, and then the people who are coming fresh into the industry. So how do you kind of craft a talent strategy which addresses both ends of the spectrum in a unified manner, so that you're able to address the client needs where line of sight to value is extremely critical? So these are some of the things that enterprises try to kind of address every single day. So, and that's the context which actually helps all the organizations drive towards, right? So I've taken this Gartner hype cycle. This is around future of work, right? So if you really look at it, every single day there are new innovation triggers coming into play, right? So if you broadly look at it, there's a concept of no-code, low-code platforms. There's a concept of prompt engineering. Like, whoever thought English will be the most powerful programming language up until this entire Gen AI world come into play, right? So now everybody feels empowered, right, to kind of solve some of the problems that they face through technology, right? So all the enabling functions like travel, HR, legal, contract, finance, everybody is now feeling empowered with the democratization of technology, right? The skill is the new currency. That's what Sanjeev was saying. So this actually kind of drives us to think that skill is how do you kind of create a skilling-based organization rather than experience and graded organizations, right? So skilling-based organizations are here to stay, and then the workforce have to continuously look at how to kind of act on the innovation trigger and then drive their journeys, right? So the holy grail of it all is citizen developers, where pretty much every function, right? Like if you look at various things that happen in the technology space, right? From doing your requirements to your architecture to your design to your testing, whatever is was done in a certain way is getting disrupted. So through the Gen AI, right? The coding assistants are here to stay, and that's a new paradigm that we are all dealing with, right? So how do you enable the workforce to kind of skill themselves, continuously learn, right? And then when any talent walks into an organization, how do you excite them with the possibilities of all this, right? So there has to be an inspiration for every employee who comes on board, and the organizations have to provide for that path for every employee to experience. There was talk about gig economy, there was talk about freedom of choice, there was talk about mobility, multiple career options. A lot of these things are becoming fairly here and now, and it's all happening so very fast. So organizations have to be very, very agile, and everybody in the organization at whatever level they are, they have to keep an open mind and that agile mindset, right? So these are some of the things that I think would be relevant for any enterprise to kind of look at. The diversity of workforce, that is another thing that is constantly kind of increasing, right? Like the tier 2, tier 3 cities, the workforce is now a lot more diverse, right? We are getting people from all hues, and we have people from the top talent. Like if you look at any innovation that has to happen, we have to get the best of talents also, right? So how do you bring the best of talents while addressing the dynamics of top line, bottom line, the dynamics of demand? So all of these are also playing always on the minds. So the variability, the number of parameters that we are dealing with is humongous. But from a workforce standpoint, I think one thing is the dynamics of day-to-day existence, right? Like how do you kind of enable that creative environment where people can feel comfortable innovating and then thriving, right? So that safety culture, the safety net, right, for any errors, all of that, like the workforce looks for that. Like everybody wants to learn new things. How do you encourage that? So that's what the intent of this slide is about, how to kind of enable that workforce to be vibrant and alive every single day. One of the key things that I emphasize is the day one mindset, right? Whenever a employee joins us, that is one of the key messages that we drive. How do you keep that spirit of learning alive every single day? Not take success for granted. We would have done the most complex of engagements. The next day, something might come and disrupt the whole way of working, right? So we are seeing many examples of that every single day, right? So the day one mindset becomes extremely critical. The mobility, the freedom of choice, allowing for that agency to flower, right? Anybody who is in the organization feeling empowered to kind of drive their own destiny, right? Providing those options. And I come from a large SI, right? I used to work for Infosys for quite some time. There, we used to kind of, were very possessive about people, right? So essentially, if any person is working in one given account, we never used to let that person go outside the account, because like once that person settles down and then we start realizing the impact and the value that he makes, it's very difficult to let go of that individual for another opportunity somewhere that is happening outside, right? We try to find some opportunity within the firm, within our own span of influence, span of control, to kind of ensure that we give some other opportunity to that person and then keep driving towards that. But unless and until the people mobility, the ability to kind of choose one's own destiny is empowered, I think the risk of attrition is too high. And I think all of you would know the hiring costs are a lot higher than retention costs, right? So essentially providing that culture to kind of say that we are with the workforce, and like given the disruptions, everybody wants to learn new things. So how do we facilitate that while addressing the current needs? So these are some of the conflicts that come from time to time, and each one of us, there's no right or wrong answer, but you have to kind of work with the system, work with the individual, and ensure that in the long run, he realizes that he gets what he wants to do, the learning curve, and trying out new things that are happening in the enterprise, right? So broadly, that's what this story says, and some of the messages: day one mindset, people mobility policy, that safety net for an employee, and choices, right? To learn every single day. That's extremely important for an organization to kind of help their clients with all the disruptions that are happening in their environments to stay alive, and then for us as an organization to kind of ensure that we retain the best of talent and we provide that opportunity for every talent to kind of flourish and prosper, right? So that's the message here. And now the workplace actually goes hand in hand with the workforce. Post the pandemic, the ways of working has completely changed, right? There's no more going back to the old ways of working, right? Where people were expected to come to work 5 days in a week. The work hours used to be, very, very demanding. The post-pandemic, pretty much everybody's life has taken a huge change, right? Every one of us, all of us were, going to office in the 8 o'clock, coming back, going through the traffic grind, come back at 9:30 in the evening, then attend to home, and then again get up in the morning and go, right? And there's absolutely nothing, no personal time available. it was managing the work-life balance was one of the key existential questions. Now, work-life balance has now, completely got transformed into something called work-life integration now, right? So it's more integration than managing the balance. So where one life starts, another life begins, it's extremely difficult to kind of draw a line, right? When I'm working from home, I'm playing the role of a father sometime, I'm playing the role of son sometime, I'm playing the role of, doing the errand sometime. The identity is shifting continuously, right? So how does an organization create a workplace which can cater to this new normal, right? Without making anybody feel guilty that, they are going through these challenges, right? So I think the work-life integration question is existential, and all the organizations have to figure out how to make everybody comfortable and trusted, right? So unless the workplace extends extreme trust for an individual to kind of, go through his or her experience, her own challenges while attending to work, it becomes extremely difficult to have a strong connect with the organization, right? And invariably, you will see people, not doing the right things. We have seen extremely huge number of cases. Like we as an organization, right? When we actually started post-COVID, there was huge dual employment challenges, right? So a lot of people were doing multiple employments and all of that, right? It went into that extreme, right? So I think we have to make people comfortable to feel that, they are trusted. It's a transparent culture, and we have to encourage people to be more open. And then, like, the gig economy is here. How do you kind of survive the gig economy while this contours of full-time employment is also there, right? So these are some of the existential questions, but I think at the end of the day, culture of the company drives a lot of this behavior. I think the culture stems right from the CEO downwards, the information, democratization, wherever the individual is, wherever their workplace is, some of the rituals, will help bring that commonality for all employees, right? In our organization, the CEO runs a town hall every week, and he pretty much shares what he shares with the board to every single employee, right? That's the culture that is out there. Like the same slides that are used for board presentations are presented to every single employee in the organization. So it creates that culture of openness and trust, right? And anybody is open to ask a question and get an answer, right? It is not scripted. It is a fairly open culture, right? Anybody from the organization can post a question, right? So that's something that is strongly encouraged. So that culture of transparency, the culture of trust, and providing for that work-life integration. These are some of the things that I think would be extremely relevant, extremely existential for all organizations to manage the disruptions that are coming thick and fast, right? So that is what some of these things kind of allude to. This is Gartner's hype cycle, and they capture the pulse of the industry fairly well, and I think it kind of indicates where it is going. And there are new things coming, right? I mean, there is always this talk about digital twin of an employee, AI avatar of an employee. Every employee will have a AI version of themselves to kind of take care of their day-to-day routine work. So there are so many disruptions, I think, that are still to come. The AR, VR world, I don't know what that throws up. There are so many exciting possibilities for a completely seamless workplace, right? You don't know where you are. You could be like, one of the examples that we have in our company is when the COVID happened, right? Everybody was stressed out at home, right? And they all, we are headquartered in Bombay. So some of them actually kind of relocated to Goa for a long duration, right? Just to kind of feel the breath of fresh air while attending to their work. So they have built a whole community in Goa. They have built a whole set of network in Goa. There's so much that has changed in their lives. And now if we were to kind of enforce this return to office policy, it will obviously break. And they are, used to certain ways of working. post the pandemic, and now suddenly this change of return to office is being enforced, and all of those are like, giving rise to extreme reactions, right? So how does an organization cater to all of that, right? So that's something that's really each organization will find their way, but they have to find their way. Another thing that I just wanted to kind of refer to is, given the digitization, right? Every employee that is now on board is fairly digital native, data native. They're all used to kind of experiencing everything in a very personalized, hyper-personalized way, right? Consumerization is there everywhere. Retailization, as you see, the Amazons, the Netflixes, the Flipkarts of the world has made the experience, has taken experience to the next level in terms of hyper-personalization, right? So the consumerization of employee experience, like every employee has to be treated like a consumer. So it's almost going towards that direction. So how do we kind of consumerize an employee experience, right? So that is another thing that is actually a statement that most of the organizations in a hybrid workplace will have to answer, right? So that is something that is, like for simple travel, travel claim reimbursements, right? Or it could be leave policy related questions, or it could be any skill related, training related questions. How do you make it easy, right? How do you digitally empower everybody to kind of address whatever they need in a very easy, seamless manner without, how many of us have gone to bank branches, right? So it is that kind of an experience. We have the bank in our hand, right? So that's what an employee needs now. So how do you address that employee experience? So consumerization of employee experience becomes extremely critical. The digital workplace, right? So this will become an expectation for Gen Z employees, right? Gen Z employees now, I think, probably form 20% of the workforce in most of the organizations. So barely, I think the average employee age is continuously going down in all the organizations. I think in our organization is less than 27. So it is Gen Z, 20% of it is Gen Z, and it will become probably 50% in the next 5 to 10 years, right? Most of the workforce will be Gen Z, and Gen Z has to stay with the older experience employees as well. So how do you address this? Gen Z becomes extremely important, and that agency of choice, the freedom, the mobility. Moment you restrict an employee saying, you cannot work, you have to be with a given project for 12 to 18 months, I think that trigger kicks into kind of revolt, right? And they're not as compelled to work as we were when we started our careers, right? They're better off, and their minds are tuned in a different way. Until and unless the workplace provides that comfort, it will be very difficult for us to retain and drive companies in a different direction, right? So that's some of those things have to be addressed in the workplace construct. So again, every function in the enterprise is going through a transformation. Everybody has to become digitally enabled, and feel comfortable addressing everything through the digital channels, right? So that's something that the hybrid workplace mandates and necessitates. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share about the workplace construct. So the workforce, workplace, and the customer. So these are the three dimensions which enterprises have to address. I think unless and until all of them blend seamlessly, one reinforcing the other, it's extremely difficult for an organization to succeed and thrive, right? If you just look at the numbers, we have grown about 4-5x in the last 3 years, right? And it's extreme disruptions, and like the talent onboarding, the training lifecycle management, the mentoring, the community feeling. I think one other thing that would help is the building those communities, I think, which Sanjeev also referred to. How do you kind of enable that collaborative zones, community zones? It could be digital, or it could be bringing them to office once in a week, once in a fortnight, or twice in a week, twice in a fortnight, right? So it all depends on what works for the organization culture, and how those trust and transparency can be built in in a gradual, seamless manner, right? So those are some of the things that, will help go a long way in helping organization thrive and succeed. So, as I said, culture is at the core of everything that we do, and unless the culture is driven right from the top, it is very difficult for the workforce and the workplace to become enjoyable, right? So everybody should feel trusted. Everything should be transparent, honest, and all of that, right? So these are the key takeaways that I want to summarize with the hybrid workplace, the work-life integration, and seamlessly blending the diversity of workforce. The workforce is going to be diverse with different thoughts, different ideas. How do you enable different ideas, different thoughts, different generations to coexist and keep going, right? So that's going to be the challenge that we'll all have to address. Employee as a consumer, right? Digitize smart ways of the working. That is extremely critical. Skill is the new currency, as Sanjeev said. So continuous learning. How do you kind of continuously react to innovation triggers? How do you create that seamless training mechanisms where people can comfortably switch from one career to another career? Like business technologists, that is becoming a new word. How do you kind of create fusion teams, cross-functional teams? How do you empower everybody to kind of become technology aware? Intersecting both technology strategy and talent strategy, right? Those are some of the things that will have to happen in the organizations, right? So just how do we all bring it together at Fractal? Values, people principles, and leadership principles, right? Values have to be codified, and it has to be made visible to every single employee every single day, right? Unless that value culture goes into everybody's DNA, it becomes difficult for an organization to create a brand and identity for itself and hold some promise to the client, right? So client first, learn and grow, think big, act fast. That safety net culture where everybody goes through those innovation triggers and tries new things, and there's a provision for failure and to learn, relearn, and relook at, right? So and then trust and be accountable. Everybody, moment that trust percolates within the organizations, everybody feels empowered and everybody feels attached to the outcomes rather than just being themselves, right? So building that culture of togetherness and connectedness to the broader company statement and vision becomes extremely easy to realize. And people principles, right? Again, trust, freedom, treating the individual like the same way one would like to be treated. These are all very simple things to say, but very difficult to internalize and operationalize, right? So those are some of the things that we live by every day, and it's constantly reinforced, right? So hire for the Fractal first and then for the appropriate role. As skilling becomes the new currency, learnability is one key aspect that we all look at, I'm sure. But unless and until that is practiced, it's extremely difficult. Today it is Gen AI, tomorrow it could be something else, right? Artificial general intelligence is coming. Quantum computing is around the corner. So there are so many disruptions that will keep happening, right? So we have to hire for a certain set of values first, skilling first, learnability first, and rest all things will align. And finally, as leaders, everybody has to kind of look at the broader vision statement that the organizations make. We are there for to serve our clients and the people. We have to care deeply about our people. We have to provide that safety net where everybody gets to that, invent, simplify, and release mindset, where everybody feels comfortable addressing the innovation trigger and then innovating and then helping that get adopted in the client organizations and also within. And there's so much confusion that keeps coming time to time, existential questions. So that's where the leadership role becomes extremely critical. Driving clarity and being bold, right? Encouraging that entrepreneurial nature within the individuals becomes extremely important. And then it's always a team sport, right? I think that's a cliche, but it's true. It's always a team sport. While we want brilliant individuals, the team together, I think the success will be limited, right? So I think these are some of the principles that will go a long way in helping organizations seamlessly blend the customer needs, the client needs, the employee needs, and then the organization itself, right? How does organization succeed, right? So with that, I think I want to conclude. But that's what I wanted to broadly share. Hope it was relevant and informative. Yeah.